What we're looking at here is a large puddle of water that has accumulated after it rained for a while. And there are a few reasons why the water is accumulating in this area. Could be poor construction, not enough slope in the walkway, or of course time. First thing I'd like to point out in the video is that there are only a few places where the water can actually drain away from this particular puddle. And as you can see here, the water has risen enough to where it created a path. If the water isn't high enough, it's not going to be able to go down this path. And you can imagine that as the pool shrinks, so will this little river. It will dwindle away. The other area is off to the left here. You can see water going behind the chain link fence. And again, the pool needs to rise to a certain level before it can drain out of these areas. Now, the next spot, and this is realistically where the problem, this is what usually creates the biggest problem, would be a break, for example, between the concrete and the asphalt. We have a break that runs realistically the length of the puddle, allowing water to absorb into the ground. Now, this is actually where the bulk of the problem will be if there is a gap. And a lot of times you're going to see grass or weeds growing out of these gaps, which tells you that they have access to moisture, the plants do, and they have access to soil. And the more plants you have, and you don't get rid of these little weeds, I should say, the roots could actually get large enough and create even a bigger problem. So if you could imagine a plant growing in here, spreading, starting to separate the gap, make it even wider, and then of course someone comes along eventually and kills the plant, then it will decompose, leaving a small hole or a larger hole than was there in the beginning. But again, most of the time, it just takes a small gap. An eighth of an inch wide will do fine. If you can imagine an eighth of an inch gap running the entire length of the crack here, and the only area where the water can safely drain away, eventually what you're going to end up with is the soil underneath these areas actually lowering. It will start to erode, I should say, especially if it wasn't compacted correctly. And even in some cases when it's compacted, you could end up with a problem if you don't have the right soil base or gravel underneath the walkways. Now here's what we end up with. These cracks in the concrete. When we lose enough soil from the bottom side of the concrete pad and even the asphalt walkways, and the soil can no longer properly support these areas, eventually the concrete will crack. Now, reason why I'm showing you this with the puddle of water here is because a lot of times people will walk by something, they'll wonder, why in the heck are these cracks here? What's happening? Well, this should provide you with a pretty good idea. The water over time will start to erode, and if you have a puddle like this that can amass a lot of water, then this just it's like a funnel. It just allows more of the water to concentrate in a particular area, accelerating the process of soil erosion, and you'll end up with the soil lowering, and eventually the walkway will lower, and over time this puddle will get larger. And the reason why is because the area underneath the walkway is shrinking, it's settling down, and you could really end up with a pretty good sized puddle. And I would imagine at one time this puddle wasn't very big, it wasn't a big concern of the property owners. But like I said, over time they will grow, and the larger the puddle gets, like I said, the more water that can go into these, concentrate into these areas, the more erosion the bigger the problem in the future. The larger the cracks, and of course, the larger the cracks, what happens? This allows even more moisture, water to get in, and again, accelerate the process. Are there a few things you can do to fix something like this? Of course, there are. You could get a concrete saw, cut the concrete, cut the asphalt, raise the areas. You could put drains in. You could put something along the building there where you got the brick wall. You could put some type of a concrete trench that would allow the water to drain to the right top side of the picture. It would allow the water to go that way. You know, the main thing is you want to keep the water away from the foundations. You know, so it's not like you just want to cut a trench. Hey, let's just cut a section out along the brick building there and put a planter in there, because now what do you have? You have all the water that's going to leak into this area, which would be a lot, by the way, going into these planters next to the footings, creating even a bigger problem. But anyway, the reason why I made the video is just to provide you with a few reasons why you'll run into concrete cracks like these.